My name is Lucas, and this is Chapter 3 of Harry Potter, The Letters from No One. The escape of the Brazilian boa constrictor earned Harry his longest ever punishment. By the time he was allowed out of his cupboard again, the summer holidays had started, and there he had already broken his new video camera, crashed his remote-controlled airplane, and the first time out on his racing bike, knocked down old Mrs. Fig as she crossed Pivot Drive on her crutches. Harry was glad school was over, but there was no escaping Dudley's gang, who visited the house every single day. Piers, Dennis, Malcolm, and Gordon were all big and stupid, but as Dudley was the biggest and the stupidest of the lot, he was the leader. The rest of them were all quite happy to join Dudley's favorite sport, Harry hunting. This is why Harry spent much time as possible out in the house wandering around, thinking about the end of the holidays, where he could see a tiny ray of hope. When September came, he would be going off to secondary school, and for the first time in his life, he wouldn't be with Dudley. Dudley had been accepted at Uncle Vernon's old private school. Smeltings Piers Polkus was going there too. Harry, on the other hand, he was going to Stonewall High, the local public school. Dudley had thought his way was very funny. They stuffed people's heads and down the toilet on the first day Stonewall, he told Harry. You want to come upstairs and practice? No, thanks, said Harry. The poor toilets never had anything horrible as down your head in it. It might be sick. Then he ran before Dudley could work at what he said. One day in July, Aunt Petunia took Dudley London to buy his Smeltings uniform, leaving Harry and Miss Fig wasn't bad as usual. It turned out she'd broken her leg tripping over one of her cats. She didn't seem quite as fond of them before. She let Harry watch television and gave him a bit of chocolate cake and tasted as though she'd had it for several years that evening. Dudley paraded him around the living room for the family in his brand new uniform. Smelting's boys won a maroon tailcats, orange knickers, bockers, and flat straws, hats called boaters. They also carried knobbly sticks used for hitting each other while teachers weren't looking. This was supposed to be good training for later life. As he looked at Dudley in his new knickerbockers, Uncle Vernon said gruffly, that it was the proudest moment of his life. Aunt Petunia burst into tears and said she couldn't believe it was her ickle Duddykins. He looked so handsome and grown up. Harry didn't trust himself to speak. He thought 2 of his ribs might already have cracked from trying not to laugh. There was a horrible smell in the kitchen the next morning when Harry went in to breakfast. It seemed to be coming from a large metal tube in the sink. He went to have a look. The tub was full of what it looked like dirty rags, swimming water, and gray water. What's this? He asked Aunt Petunia. Her lips tightened as they always did if daring to ask a question. New school uniforms, she said. Harry looked in the bowl again. Oh, he said. I didn't realize it had to be so wet. Don't be stupid, snapped Aunt Petunia. I'm dyeing some of Dudley's old things gray for you. It'll look just like everyone else's when I've finished. Harry seriously doubted this, but thought it's best not to argue. He sat down at the table. He tried not to think about he was going to look on the first day at Stonewall Hall, like he was wearing bits of old elephant skin, probably. Dudley and Uncle Vernon came in both with wrinkled noses because of the smell of Harry's new uniform. Uncle Vernon opened his newspaper as usual, and Dudley banged his smelting stick, which he'd carry everywhere on the table. They heard a click of the mail slot and flop of letters on the doormat. Get the mail, Dudley, said Uncle Vernon from behind his paper. Make Harry get it. Get the mail, Harry. Make Dudley get it. Poke him with the smelting stick, Dudley. Harry dodged the smelting stick and went to go get the mail. The things lay on the doormat. Postcard from Uncle Vernon's sisters. Marge, who was on vacation, I was right. brown envelope that looked like a bill, a letter for Harry. Harry picked up it and stared at it, his heart twanging like a giant elastic man. No one ever in his life had written to him who would. He had no friends, no other relatives. He didn't belong to the library, so he'd never gotten rude notes asking for books back. Yet there was a letter addressed to plainly 3. There could be no mistake. Mr. H. Potter, the cupboard under the stair, 4 Pivot Drive, Little Winging, Surrey. The envelope was thick and heavy, made of yellowish parchment, and the address written in emerald green ink. There was no stamp. Turning the envelope over, his hand trembling, Harry saw a purple wax seal bearing a coat of arms, a lion, an eagle, a badger, snake surrounding the letter H. "Hurry up, boy," shouted Uncle Vernon from the kitchen. "What are you doing, checking for letter bombs?" He chuckled at him as his own joke. Harry went back to the kitchen, still staring at his letter. He handed Uncle Vernon the bill and the postcard, sat down, and slowly began to open the yellow envelope. Uncle Vernon ripped open the bill, snorted in disgust, and flipped over the postcard. "Marge is ill," informed Aunt Petunia. "Ate a funny whelk." "Dad," said Dudley suddenly, "Harry's got something." Harry was on the point of unfolding his letter, which was written in the same heavy parchment as the envelope, which was jerked sharply under the hand of Uncle Vernon. "That's mine," said Harry, trying to snatch it back. "Who'd be writing to you?" sneered Uncle Vernon, shaking the letter open to one hand and glancing at it. His face went from red to green faster than a set of traffic lights. And it didn't stop there. Within seconds, it was grayish-white of old porch. "Petunia," he gasped. Dudley tried to grab the letter and read it, but Uncle Vernon held it high out of his reach. Aunt Petunia took it curiously and read it. First line, For a moment, it looked though as she might faint. She clutched her throat and made a choking noise. "Vernon! Oh my goodness, Vernon!" They stared at each other, seemed to have forgotten that Harry and Dudley were still in the room. Dudley wasn't used to being ignored. He gave his father a sharp tap on the head, using a smelting stick. "I want to read the letter," he said loudly. "I want to read it," said Harry fiercely. "It's mine." Get out, both of you," croaked Uncle Vernon, stuffing his letter back inside its envelope. Harry didn't move. "I want my letter," he shouted. "Let me see it," demanded Dudley. "Out!" roared Uncle Vernon, and he took both of Harry's and Dudley's by the scuffs of their necks, threw them into the hall, slamming the kitchen door behind them. Harry and Dudley promptly had furious but silent. Listened at once the keyhole. Dudley won. So Harry, his glasses dangling from one ear, lay flat on his stomach to listen to a crack behind the door and the floor. "Vernon," Aunt Petunia was saying in a quivering voice, "look at the address. How could they possibly know where he sleeps? You don't think they're watching us?" "Watching, spying, might follow us," muttered Uncle Vernon wildly. What should we do, Vernon? What should we write back? Tell them we don't want." Harry could see the Uncle Vernon's shiny black shoes pacing up down the kitchen. "No," he said finally. "We'll ignore it. If they don't get an answer, yes, that's best. We won't do anything. But I'm not having one of those in the house, Petunia. Didn't we swear when we took him out we'd stamp him out of that dangerous nonsense?" That evening he got back from work. Uncle Vernon did something before he visited Harry in the cupboard. "Where's my letter?" said Harry in his moment to Uncle Vernon, squeezed to the door. "Who's writing me?" "No one. It was addressed to you by mistake," said Uncle Vernon surly. "I had burned it." "It was not a mistake," said Harry angrily. "I had my cupboard on it." "Silence!" yelled Uncle Vernon, and a couple of spiders fell from the ceiling. He took a few deep breaths and forced his face into a smile, which looked quite painful. Yes, Harry? About this cupboard. Your aunt and I have been thinking. You've been really getting big for it. We might think it would be nice if you moved into Dudley's second bedroom. Why? Said Harry. Don't ask questions, snapped Uncle. Take the stuff upstairs now. The Dursleys' house had 4 bedrooms, one for Uncle Vernon, one for Aunt Petunia, and one for visitors. Usually Uncle Vernon's sister, Marge, one where Dudley slept, and once where Dudley kept all of his toys and things that wouldn't fit into his first bedroom. It only took Harry one trip upstairs to move everything he owned from the cupboard. He sat down on the bed and stared around him. Nearly everything here was broken. The month-old video camera was lying on top of a small working tank. Dudley had once driven over the next door's neighbor's dog in the corner of Dudley's first ever television set, which it had put his foot through when his favorite program had been canceled. There was a large bird cage once held a parrot that Dudley had swapped at school for a real air rifle, which was up on a shelf in the end bent because Dudley had sat on it. The other shelves were full of books. They were the only things in this room that looked as though they'd never been touched. From downstairs came the sound of Dudley bawling at his mother. I don't want him here. I don't want him here. I need that room. Make him get out. Harry sighed and stretched out the bed. Yesterday, he'd been given anything to be up here. Today, he'd rather be back in his cupboard with that letter than up here without it. Next morning at breakfast, everyone was rather quiet. Dudley was in shock. He'd screamed, whacked his father with his smelting stick, been sick on purpose. He's kicked his mother and thrown his tortoise through the greenhouse roof, and he still didn't have his room back. Harry was thinking about this time yesterday and bitterly wishing he'd opened the letter in the hall. Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia kept looking at each other darkly. When the mail arrived, Uncle Vernon, who seemed to be trying to be nice to Harry, made Dudley go and get it. They heard him banging on things with his smelting sticks all the way down the hall. Then he shouted, "There's another one!" Mr. H. Potter in the small bedroom, 4 Pivot Drive, with a strange old cry. Uncle Vernon leapt from his seat and ran down the hall, Harry right behind him. Uncle Vernon had to wrestle Dudley to get to the letter from him, which was made difficult by the fact that Harry grabbed Uncle Vernon around the neck from behind. After the minute of confused fighting, which everyone got hit by a lot by the smelting stick, Uncle Vernon straightened up and gasped for breath, Harry's letter clutched in his hand. "Go to your cupboard, I mean your bedroom," he wheezed. Harry. "Dudley, go, just go." Harry walked round and round in his new room. Someone knew he had moved out of his cupboard, and they seemed to know he hadn't had his first lever. They'd try again, and this time he'd make sure they didn't fail. He had a plan. The repaired alarm clock rang at 6 o'clock in the morning. Harry turned it off quickly and dressed silently. He mustn't wake the Dursleys. He stole downstairs, turning out any of the lights. He was going to wait for the postman at the corner of Pivot Drive and letters for a wait. His heart hammered as he crept across the dark, long hall. Arg! Harry leapt into the air. He trod in something big and squashy at the doormat. Something alive. Lights clicked on upstairs, and Horror realized that the big squashy someone was Uncle Vernon's face. Uncle Vernon had been lying on the front of the door, sleeping in a bag, clearly making sure that Harry didn't do exactly what he'd been trying to do. He shouted at Harry for about half an hour and then told him to go make a cup of tea. Harry shuffled miserably off into the kitchen, and by the time he got back, the mail had arrived right into Uncle Vernon's lap. Harry could see 3 letters addressed in greeting. "I want," he began, but Uncle Vernon was tearing the letters into pieces before his eyes. Uncle Vernon didn't go to work that day. He stayed at home and nailed up the mail slot. "See," he explained to Aunt Petunia, "that though a mouthful of nails, if they can't deliver them, they'll just give up." "I'm not sure that'll work, Vernon." "Oh, these people's minds work in strange ways, Petunia. They're not like you and me," said Uncle Vernon, trying to knock in a nail with a piece of fruit cake in Aunt Petunia he had just brought him. On Friday, no less than 12 letters arrived from Harry. As they couldn't go through the mail slot, they had been pushed under the door, slotted through strides, and a few even forced through the small window in the downstairs bathroom. Uncle Vernon stayed at home again. After burning all the letters, he got out a hammer and nails and boarded up the cracks around the front door so no one could go out. He hummed a small tiptoe through the tulips as he worked and jumped at his small noises. On Saturday, things had been to get out of hand. 24 letters to Harry had found their way into the house, rolled up and hidden inside each 2 dozen eggs. That they were very confused. The milkman had handed Aunt Petunia through the living room window, while Uncle Vernon made furiously telephone calls to the post office and Derry trying to find someone to complain to, and to Aunt Petunia shredded the letters to the professor. "What on earth wants you to talk to you this badly?" Dudley asked Harry in amazement. On Sunday morning, Uncle Vernon had sat down at breakfast table looking tired and rather ill, but not happy. "No post Sundays," he reminded them cheerfully, as spread marmalade on his newspapers. "No damn letters today." Something came whizzing down the kitchen chimney as he spoke and caught him sharply on the back of the head. The next moment, 30 or 40 letters came pelting out of the fireplace like bullets. The Dursleys ducked, but Harry leapt into the air, trying to catch one. "Out! Out!" Uncle Vernon seized Harry around the waist and threw him into the hall, when Aunt Petunia and Dudley had run out of their arms and over their faces. Uncle Vernon slammed the door shut. They could hear the letters still streaming into the room, bouncing off walls and the floor. That's it," said Uncle Vernon, trying to speak calmly, but pulling great tufts out of his mustache at the same time. "I want you all back here in 5 minutes, ready to leave. We're going away. Just pack some clothes. No arguments." He looked so dangerous, with half mustache missing, that no one dared to argue. 10 minutes later, they had wrenched their way through a boarded-up doors, and there was a car speeding toward the highway. Dudley was sniffling in the back seat. Excuse me. His father had hit him around the head before holding them up. Boarded up the doors. They were in a car speeding toward the highway. Dudley was holding them up while he tried to pack his television, VCR, and computer in his sports bag. They drove and they drove. Even Aunt Petunia didn't dare to ask where they were going. Every now and then, Uncle Vernon would take a sharp turn and drive in the opposite direction for a while. "Shake 'em off, shake 'em off," he would mutter whenever he did this. They didn't stop to eat or drink. By nightfall, Dudley was howling. He never had such a bad day in his life. He was so hungry he'd missed 5 television programs he wanted to see, and he'd never gone so long without blowing up an alien on his computer. Uncle Vernon stopped at last outside a gloomy-looking hotel on the outskirts of a big city. Dudley and Harry shared a room with twin beds and damp, musty sheets. Dudley snored, but Harry stayed awake, sitting on the windowsill, staring down at the lights passing on the cars and wondering. They ate stale cornflakes and the cold tinned tomatoes on toast for breakfast the next day. They had just finished when the owner of the hotel came out to the table. "Excuse me, but is one of you Mr. H. Potter?" "Only I got about 100 of these at my front desk." She held up a letter so they could read the green ink address. "Mr. H. Potter, room 17, Railview Hotel, Cake Source." Harry made a grab for the letter, but Uncle Vernon knocked his hand out of the way. The woman said, "I'll take them," said Uncle Vernon, standing up quickly, following her from the dining room. "Wouldn't it be better if we just to go home, dear Aunt Petunia?" suggested timidly. Hours later, but Uncle Vernon didn't seem to hear exactly what he was looking for. None of them knew. He drove into the middle of the forest, got out, looked around, shook his head, back in the car, and off they went again. Same thing happened in the middle of the plowed field. Halfway across the suspension bridge at the top of the middle-level parking garage. Daddy's gone mad, hasn't he?" Dudley asked Aunt Petunia dully late that afternoon. Uncle Vernon had parked a car at the coast, locked them inside the car, and disappeared. It started to rain. Great drops beat on the roof of the car. Dudley sniffled. "It's Monday," he told his mother. "The great Humberto's on tonight. I want to stay somewhere with the television." Monday. This reminded Harry of something. It was Monday. You could usually count on Dudley to know the days of the week because of the television. Then tomorrow, Tuesday. Then it was Harry's 11th birthday. Of course, his honked and package it, didn't Uncle Vernon. Of course, his birthdays were never exactly fun. Last year, the Dursley had given him a coat hanger and a pair of Uncle Vernon's old socks. Still, you wore 11 every day. Uncle Vernon was back and he was smiling. He was also carrying a long, thin package and didn't answer Aunt Petunia when she asked what he had brought. "Found the perfect place," he said. "Come on, everyone out." It was very cold outside at the car. Uncle Vernon was pointing at whatever looked like a large rock way out in the sea, and perched on the top of the rock, a miserable little shack that you could imagine one thing for sure, and there's no television there. Storms forecast for tonight. Uncle Vernon gleefully clapping his hands together, and this gentleman cuddly agreed, led us to his boat. A toothless old man came ambling toward them, pointing to a gray, rather wicked grin, an old rowboat bobbing in the iron-gray water below them. "I've already got us some rations," said Uncle Vernon, "so all aboard." It was freezing in the boat, an icy spray, and the rain crept towards their neck, and chilly wind whipped their faces. After what seemed like hours, they had reached the rock where Uncle Vernon, slipping and sliding, led the way to the broken-down house. Inside was a horrible, smelly, strongly of seaweed, and the wind whistled through the gaps of the wooden halls, and the fireplace was damp and empty. There were only 2 rooms. Uncle Vernon's rations turned out to be a big bag of chips and each 4 bananas. He tried to start a fire, but the empty chip bag wouldn't smoke and it shriveled up. Could you do with some of those letters now, eh?" he said cheerfully. He was in a very good mood. Obviously, he had thought nobody stood the chance of reaching him here in the storm to deliver mail. Harry privately agreed, thought that didn't cheer him up all night. As night fell, they promised the storm blew up around them, spray them from the wall, waves splattered the walls of the hut, and fierce wind rattled the filthy windows. Aunt Petunia found a few old moldy blankets in the second room and made up a bed for Dudley on the moth-eaten sofa. She and Uncle Vernon went off to the lumpy bed next door, and Harry left to find the softest bit of floor he could and curled under the thinnest, most ragged blanket ever. The storm raged more and more fiercely as the night went on. Harry couldn't sleep. He shivered and turned over, trying to get comfortable with his stomach, rumbling with hunger. Dudley's snores were drowned by the low rolls of thunder, and that started near midnight. The lighted dial of Dudley's watch was dangling over the edge of the sofa. On his far wrist told Harry he'd been 11 in 10 minutes time. He lay and watched his birthday tick nearer, wondering if the Dursleys would remember at all, wondering where the letter writers was now. 5 minutes to go. Harry heard something crack outside. He hoped the roof wasn't going to fall in, although it might be warmer if it did. 4 minutes to go. Maybe the house in Pivot Drive would be so full of letters when they got back that he'd been able to steal one somehow. 3 minutes to go. What was that? The sea slapping hard on the rock like that? And 2 minutes ago, was that funny crunching noise? Was the rock crumbling into the sea? 1 minute to go, and it'd been 11. 30 seconds. 20, 10, 9. Maybe he'd wake up Dudley just to annoy him. 3, 2, 1. Boom! The whole shack shivered, and Harry sat bolt upright, staring at the door. Someone was outside, knocking to come in. That is the end of chapter 3 for Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, and I'll see you guys next time.